Hi and welcome to this video in the MRDCL EPS series, which stands for Excel Productivity Scripting, in which we look at building a template and writing the script and understanding perhaps the best approaches to achieving that. Now, in the previous video, we looked at preparing for development of EPS template, and the one that was looked at was this particular template here, where we wanted to automate the tables so that a less skilled person, shall we say, can use this and tables are set up in the same way. Now, I would fully expect this to be expanded beyond this, having more features, more columns, more options, so that a wider range of tables could be managed all within the same worksheet. But we're going to just try and program this so that we've got some script that can read this. Now, there's two parts to this process. One was actually specifying the tables, and the second part is actually specifying the banners that can be used. So you can see here that we've got three banners that are calling different combinations of gender, age and Q1, the X indicating that they're to be included, blank meaning they're not. And then those banners are called here as banner 1, 2 and 3, and the tables are generated with, in this case, Q1 as the row, banner as the banner 3 rather, the title being used being that title, and whether the table is shown or not, or whether it's hidden, and any filters specified here, any calls to any inserted code so that that's automatically dropped in would appear here, any format options wanted, and these will be ignored because they're just notes to help the person using it or to convey a message to others. Alright, so the first thing we're going to approach then is the banners part of it, because we need the banners before we can do the tables. So if we look at the script that we're going to work on here, you can see that we have some fairly standard questions. Question 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, gender and age. And in here now we're going to put in some code in here to handle the banners and some code in here to handle the tables. Now, the first thing that we need to do, if we go back to our workbook, is looking at the banners, is to decide how many banners there are. So there are 3 banners in here, so we need some way to tell the template, that the EPS template, that there are 3 of them. Now, one way of doing that would be to put in here is to set banners equal to 3. That's one way of doing it. It might be more convenient to put that at the top of the script, or we could alternatively put it in as a prompt. So we can put in a pp banners equals, and it's a prompt then, and we can just type in 3 when we run it, and it will know there are 3 banners. So I'm going to put mine in there. There's various ways of doing it. I could use set commands either at the top or just before it's called. I'm going to be prompted for it when I run so that I can enter a 3. Now, the first thing you'll notice at the top of the script, or somewhere before I'm going to actually use this workbook, I need a db open command, and I'm going to call my workbook db xls. That's the name I'm giving it. You can call it A, anything that's alpha will be accepted, but I'm going to call mine db xls. So I prefer to do that because it separates it from do loops, where I tend to use A, B and C, and from set commands, where I vary what I do with set commands, but it makes it more distinctive. At the end of my script here, it's a good policy to close this workbook, and we do that by just saying db close, the name that I gave it, db xls, and that means then that it's properly closed at the end of the run. If you leave it open, you can start to leak CPU and have a slightly underperforming PC, so it's a good practice to just close it at the end. Alright, so now we're going to put in our banners, and the first thing I'm going to do is say I want to do a loop which runs from 1 to banners. So this is just a loop that's going to go around, having picked up the number of banners. So let's just see that in action. Let's close it. And during this demonstration, I am going to leave the workbook open. I should say this is bad practice. You should always close your workbook when you run. But as this is such a small workbook, it's not a problem. But a big workbook, it will significantly slow down any runs that you've got. And I'm going to open up this script now so that I can start to run it. And if I run it, you'll see when it runs, it's going to prompt me for how many banners I've got, 3, and it's going to go ahead and just read my script. And of course, it's got nothing in it so far. It's waiting for me to put the EPS script in so that it will automate the banners and the tables from it. Alright, so it's looping around the number of times I've got the banners. Now I want to put in the script that's going to pick up those banners. So I'm going to say $banner, and I'm going to call the letter A in there so that for the first banner it will call it banner 1, then banner 2, and banner 3. So let's stick with that. And now I want to go to my workbook, and I'm getting the information about my banners from the banners worksheet. So I'm going to have to loop around the banners worksheet for each of these banners to see which variables are being pulled in. So let's go here, and I'm going to say star db, star db loop db1 jbxls is the name of the workbook, and the worksheet was called banners. Not to be confused with the index here called banners. You might, if you prefer, to give it a different name, but of course this is the index called banners that I'm setting to 3, and this is the name of the worksheet. Now what I want to do is I want to call in all of the columns that are marked with X. So when I'm doing banner 1, I want gender and Q1, but I don't want age. When I do banner 2, I want all of them, and when I do banner 3, I don't want gender, but I want the other 2. So if it's X, I want it, but if it's not X, I want to skip it. So I'm going to say in here, skip 99 string db1 dot banner A. So that's going to refer to banner 1 when I'm doing banner 1 and banner 2, the column headed banner 1, banner 2, equal to blank. So when it's blank, so when that column is blank, I don't want to pull in the code. I could perhaps call that as not equal to X, would be perhaps a slightly safer way of doing it in case there's anything else like a space in that column. So maybe not equal to X is a better way of doing it. If it has been called in, I want to call in what's in DB1, and let's look at the workbook. I want to call in this piece of text here. I want to call in gender, age, or Q1, depending on where it comes up. And so it's called DB1 dot variable, comma, star 99. So it's going to skip over this piece of code here if it hasn't got an X, but if it has got an X, it's going to put that variable there. Now I'm going to do some cheating here, and you do some things with some cheats when you're using EPS. Just to make it easier for myself, I'm going to put a false on the end of this, which I'm going to suppress, and that just makes it easier to pick up the labeling, as you'll see in a minute. Alright, so now I've got to pick up the labels, and it's very similar code that I want here, so I'm going to copy and paste this and then just edit it. So rather than defining that, I want H equals, everything's going to be the same down to here. Now rather than a comma, when you're picking up labels and combining them together, you use a plus sign rather than a comma. So I'm going to add a plus sign there. And now you can see what I'm going to do with this bit on the end here. I'm going to add a label which says empty and suppress it so that my quote comma comes on the end. And of course, the reason I'm doing this, I don't know how many variables it's going to plus together, so I don't know where it's going to end. So if I put an empty code on the end, which I did for that F there, that should all work fine and give me the labels I want. So let's just go ahead and see whether that's worked for me. Put in the 3 banners that I specified, and it looks as though it's compiled. And if I now go down to my code, you can see I've got banner 1, which picks up gender, Q1, and F for empty. Gender, Q1, and empty of the text. Banner 2 has got the same sort of principle, gender, age, and Q1, and so on. So everything's ready now to be used in the tabulation part. Alright, we can now move on to specifying our tables using the worksheet here. So I'm going to go to that workbook, and we've got to take account of all these things that are going on here. So I always believe in doing this step by step because it just makes it that little bit easier. If you start trying to do everything in one go, it's very easy to get confused what you're doing. So let's first of all just start with the basic things that we want. So I'm going to open this up again, and my loop this time is db loop db1 equals dbxls, and this time I'm going around the tables worksheet. So that's going to send it from the top to the bottom of this worksheet here, starting at row 2, going down to row 5. And let's first of all just start with doing a standard table for each row. So let's first of all then go round that loop and say that the table number, now the table number, we want it to step up automatically, so I'm going to put in here start set t equals 0, so that in here I can say plus t, and that's a shorthand way of adding 1 automatically. So the first table becomes table 1, the second one table 2, and so on. And in here I'm going to call in, the rows are going to be qnum, so I'm just going to pull that piece of text in there. So I want db1.qnum, and for my banner I want $banner, and I want the piece of text in here 3, 1, 2 and 2. Now I could put in db1.banner in here to pull that in, but that won't work unfortunately. What the drivers and from Microsoft Supply do is they'll always add a decimal place. So if I just put that in there, it will return the text here $banner 1.0, 2.0 or 3.0. So what I need to do is to set that to an index. I'm going to call it banner ID and say that banner ID is db1.banner, and then rather than putting in db1.banner, I can just refer to the index banner ID. Now that seems slightly convoluted, but it means that then it's going to set that to an integer and it'll just put in 1, 2, 3 and 4. So as always with these things, just keep checking them step by step. It's easier to work if you just keep checking it as you go along. And now at the bottom here you can see I've got 4 nice tidy tables that pick up what I want. Alright, so now let's work across the worksheet and see what else we can do here. Well, the first thing I've noticed is that we've got this use column. So I only want the table to appear if that says yes or y. So I'm going to change that one to n so that we can test this and save it. So let's go into the script again and look at what we're doing here. So what I want to do is that when that is set to no, I want to skip the table. So we might say here skip 99 string db1.use not equal to yes, or we could have said equal to no, whichever you think is the safer option. And where that's the case, we don't want to pick up the banner ID because it's wasting time, and we want to jump over the table. So now what we're doing, we've implemented a way of skipping the table if that's set to n. So again, we ought to compile that, set it to 3 banners, and with a bit of luck, we go to our tables. Yes, we've got tables 1, 2 and 3 with question 2 missing. And I really do stress it's a good way of developing things in a sort of step-by-step way. The next thing we've got to take account of is the filter. So if there's a filter, we want to pull in the filter, but and a base text. If there's no filter, we want to do nothing about it. So let's have a look at that. So we go to the column called filter. So that would go on the front of the if statement. So what I want to do here is I want to say skip, it can't be 99 again, or it'll skip the whole thing, 88, string db1.filter equal to nothing. So when the filter is blank, I don't want to try and pull the filter in, but if it isn't blank, I want to put the word if $db1.filter in there. So it's going to put the if dollar in for me and then just pull in what it says And of course I want the same sort of code if there's a filter to pull in the filter text. So I'm going to say skip 88 string. I could have copied that. Filter equal to blank. And in here I can put bt equals db1 dot filter text. So it pulls in that filter text in this column automatically. Alright, we're starting to progress with this task now. Let's just run it to make sure we're still going well. Okay, so I've got an error in here now at line 64. And I think I know what this is. Okay, I haven't put a star 88 in here, so there's nowhere to skip to if we don't want the filter. So that's the error, and that's a really good debug message in there. As you can see, it's actually telling me it was at that particular line in the file that the problem occurred. So we try again. 3 banners. I've now got one error. Let's have a look at what that is. Here it is, and I didn't put a comma in before the filter, so we need to just correct that. So this is all good, regular sort of things that one does when one's developing these templates. So I really don't mind not hiding my errors. So I want a filter in there with a comma, and now I think our template's going to work absolutely perfectly. And if we go down to the bottom, we can see that filter's been pulled in, and the base title is also pulled in. So it's important to debug these things, I think, as you go along. Alright, so the next thing we might want to do is to pull in the file if there's some instructions in here that add something to what we want to do. So I'm going to pull in my file now. Let's have a look at what my Q2 does first. So here it is, and what my Q2 is doing is it's pulling in a fairly random variable here. It's not a very interesting variable. It's got some text associated with it, and then it's adding in its own table rather than having it automatically generated. And of course, this code could be anything. This could be a huge amount of complex code to do a complex table. This is just an example of what we're going to pull in. So we're going to pull that in. So what we want is, if we got something in the My File field, we want to insert that after the table for question 2. It could be before, or we could have 2 fields, one for before and one for after. That's quite a common thing to do. So when we get down to here, we want to see whether there's anything to insert. So we can use the same style of thing again. Skip 88 string db1 dot myfile equal to quote quote. So I want to skip over this line of code, but if there is something in that field, I want to insert db1 dot myfile in here. There it is, my Q2, and a square bracket around that, and another square bracket, which can look a bit strange, for the insert file. So if that was not in EPS, that would be insert my Q2. That would be perfectly fine, but it is EPS, so my Q2 is substituted with db1.myfile. So let's just check that is working. 3 banners. And we go to the bottom, and you can see now we've got, oh, it hasn't done that because it's not using Q2. Okay, so let's just activate that. We want that to come in, and we need to save that. Just save it, run it again, and now I think we'll get what we want. There it is. There's the extra variable called VQ2 and the table that I implemented with the code that went with it. And that could be lots of tables, one table, anything you wanted could go in there, definitions of variables, anything that was appropriate could go in there. Alright, and so finally I think the last task is to pull in the format option. So the same principle here. If there's format options, we want to use them. If there's none, we don't. So let's go to our script. And here, when we get to the table statement, in here, we want to say skip. Now, we can't use 88 again, so we're going to say skip, or we could use 88 here because it has actually closed it. But skip 77 string db1. Let's just check what it's called. It's called formats. Formats equal to nothing. So we don't, if there's nothing in the formats column of the worksheet, we're going to skip. But if there is, we want to say f equals db1.formats and close it with a rounded bracket. And now, hopefully, we have completed this template. Let's run it. And if we go now down to the tables, we should find that the formats have been called in correctly. And on that table there, we have formats called in as well. So it looks as though this template is now working. We can just test it once more. We could change this here to banner 3. We could say we don't want to use this table. And we could copy this filter so that it appears here, for example. Let's just test all of that to make sure it's working. Of course, it would need more thorough testing than this, but it looks as though it's working. 3, edit list, go to here, and it's now made the changes that we made. And we should be able to test that with banners as well. We could put in banner 4 now, and banner 4 could perhaps just be age on its own. Let's save that. Go to my tables, and now on this table, for example, I could use banner 4, save it, close it, probably for the last time. We've now got 4 banners, and sure enough, everything's worked fine. We've now got banner 4, which just picks up age, and banner 4 is used on table 1. So it looks now as though this EPS script and template is working, which means that we could distribute it to others, load it on a server, do what we want with it, and just call it when we want it, and use it in any of our scripts. And that's the end of this video. There's 2 more examples of how you can use EPS, and perhaps covering some slightly more complex examples. Thank you.